You're listening to Winnipeg's Classic 107. My name is Simon Rusnak. The Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra's BMO Beyond Classic series begins with Brooks and her bassoon. Plenty of alliteration and plenty of exquisite music from the Mozart catalogue, alongside Prokofiev, Shostakovich, and American Omar Thomas. It's my pleasure to welcome back WSO Principal Bassoonist Kathryn Brooks to the show. Hello, great to have you back here on Winnipeg's Classic 107.
Hello, great to be here.
Kathryn, when we last spoke, it was about a year and a bit ago, and it was regarding your WSO at home matinee performance alongside another principal, cellist Yuri Hooker, and you were performing, in addition to some other works, music of Mozart, the duo for bassoon and cello, and now you're back in the spotlight with more music of Mozart. What is it about Mozart and the bassoon?
That's a good question. Mozart he really knew how to write well for the instrument. A lot of his symphonies also have great bassoon parts in it. You look at an audition excerpt list, you'll have one or two Mozart symphonies on there. You'll have Marriage of Figaro on there. Mozart knew what he was doing with the bassoon, and they're great lines. They're fun. He knew how to get the bassoon to sing. He knew how to also feature it in its kind of comedic way sometimes, but he really knew how to make the line go and make it vocal. You'll notice that in the second movement of the symphony. And he also has a way of writing technically for the instrument that gives the player a chance to make it sound good. He doesn't go beyond the scope of the instrument. And it's not easy, but it's not impossible. So that's nice. It's satisfying music to play.
I'm sure that it is.
He was doing.
Yeah. I hear that about Mozart. I hear he was, kind of knew what was going on when it came to music. But, I was also doing a bit of digging on this, and I found that it was actually the first wind concerto, the first wind instrument he featured in a concerto, which is pretty cool. He was 18 at the time. And I mean, I'm curious about this because I don't know a lot about the bassoon itself. I'm not a bassoonist. I played clarinet in grade 7. That's about as close as I got. But in the time of Mozart, was this a sort of relatively new instrument, at least in terms of its new modern iteration, as compared to like the Dulcian or like the older kind of more Baroque style bassoon? Was he embracing a new sort of technology then, or am I totally
wrong? I don't think so. Interestingly, the bassoon, other than the Baroque bassoon, like the classical bassoon has been around for a long time. Mm-hmm. And pretty well the instrument I'm playing today is the same as the instrument that would have been around in Mozart's time and just like before him as well. The other woodwinds all went through an overhaul, but we're still waiting for that in the bassoon world. Make our instrument a little easier, like the other instruments have been made modernized.
Well, obviously,
maybe it was because it was just like solidly like, okay, this is your bassoon, this is what you got, and just been there and playing.
A super capable instrument already. So why rework the wheel that way? So I mean, with the bassoon, I mean, you mentioned just how wonderfully Mozart writes for it. He obviously had a fondness for the instrument. I'm curious, can you tell us a little bit more about the bassoon itself? I mean, you talked about how it's kind of been the same ever since the classical era. Give us just a general lowdown for a person who's never sat down and really read about bassoons.
You need about 5 thumbs to play the bassoon. I think we have like one thumb has 8 or 9 keys to look after just for one thumb, my left thumb, and then my other thumb has something like 5 keys. It's an interesting instrument that pretty well of all of the instruments, you can't see your fingers at all, like while you're playing. And even if you're playing a flute, you could side eye like your fingerings and stuff. So all of the memory in the playing is really muscle memory. There's no visual memory that goes along with it. What else with the bassoon? You have to make your own reed for the instrument. And that's a lot of time. But you get to really make your own sound then, which is nice, your own voice. And what else about it? It's got the widest range of the woodwind instruments, plays really low. You'll hear that in as the grandfather in Peter and the Wolf, and then plays really high. You'll hear in Ravel G major in the first movement, or in Rite of Spring, the opening, or in Bolero. Bassoon is featured in its extreme high register. So it's got a lot of different characters it's featured as in music. So it's fun to play. If you're looking for an instrument that you can visually catch on to and remember stuff by, probably the bassoon's not the right instrument for you.
Yeah. You mentioned, I want to unpack one of those things a little bit more. When we first connected before we got chatting, you were actually working on one of your reeds. Can you talk about why it's so important for bassoonists to work on their reeds? A double reed instrument, we should clarify, as a member of the woodwind
Right,
family.
yeah. So both oboists, both bassoonists, and the WSO make our own reeds from a tube of bamboo. This is a skill that you develop either late high school or in university, and it's every instrumentalist, every bassoonist and oboist, like, your mouth shape is different, and you have to really make a reed that fits to your needs, your face makeup, how you blow your air, and anything that you buy from a store just won't sound good enough. You can't take it on stage. I wish I could take a store-bought reed on stage. I'd save a lot of time. But it's so specific to your voice. It's like, if you could be the best bassoonist or best oboist on the planet, and if you have a bad reed, then you are no longer the best bassoonist or oboist.
Yeah.
It's really a big time commitment making the reeds. We have all sorts of machines and knives and just all sorts of stuff to make our reeds, and it's really between the reed and the instrument, that's really what makes our voice. Makes it an individual voice. I'm
also curious about, for you as a bassoonist, you spend a lot of time with your instrument, working on every aspect of your instrument, and indulging in its sound and timbre. And you spoke to this a little bit earlier, but how would you characterize the sound of the bassoon?
That's a good question. I would say that it has different sounds, many sounds. It can have a sweet singing sound, which again, people are tuning in. They'll hear that in the second movement of the Mozart. That's one of my favorite characteristics of it, the sound, it's like above middle C, the tenor register, we call it. Tchaikovsky Symphony No. 4, the second movement, features the bassoon in this register. It's a really singing, beautiful vocal register. So I like the singing quality of the instrument, but there's also like a jovial and like light kind of character to the sound sometimes as well. You'll hear some of that in the first movement and the third movement. But also, it can sound like pretty intense or angry at times, like I referenced Peter and the Wolf earlier. It's the grandpa, like, when he's getting mad at his grandson, sounds serious. So I would say there's not like a specific sound to the bassoon, because it's such a characterful instrument that there are many different sounds that if you have a good reed, you'll be able to get those sounds out of the instrument.
Yeah, a super expressive instrument. I mean, the reason why I ask that is because as a radio host, introducing a piece that features the bassoon, we'll say, oh, listen for the richness or the expressivity of the instrument. But it's really cool to hear from someone who really knows these instruments intimately well. And like you say, it's got that low end, but also that wonderful singing quality, like almost like a sweet nasal sound in the fondest sense of the word. Like it really is such a beautiful instrument, and so thrilled that it's being featured in this opening BMO Beyond Classics series concert. Now, the last question I have for you, Kathryn, You've been with the WSO since 2013, principal since 2018. What are you most looking forward to about this performance on Saturday?
I'm well, my dad will be there
Oh,
from
wonderful.
Cleveland, so that's fun. He's coming from Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh,
He hasn't
wonderful.
been to Winnipeg since before the pandemic, so I'm looking forward to seeing him in the audience. But I'm just looking forward to making some beautiful music with my colleagues and playing for a live audience. And in that audience will be my husband and my dad, so I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, that's marvelous. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me today at Classic 107. Great connecting with you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.
Of Our New Day Begun, Mozart, Shostakovich, and Thomas takes place Saturday, October 30th, 7:30 p.m. at the Centennial Concert Hall, featuring principal bassoonist Kathryn Brooks. Make sure you purchase your tickets sooner rather than later by visiting the website wso.ca.